Darkness falls inside the GM Studios halls. Tabletop games where nightmares creep. In a realm where sanity is lost and weak. Welcome to the abyss where dreams shatter. Inside the GM studio, nothing else matters. Blood and chaos, the dark arts unfold. In the realm of role-playing, where legends are told.
Legend, bruv. Legend. Welcome to Side Quest episode of Inside the GM Studio, where we broadcast out into Electric Internet Land. Questions from Electric Internet Land. I am your host, David.
I am Matt.
I'm going to go ahead and roll that D20. Ooh, I get a 2. Yeah.
Two. Okay.
Bad attack roll. Bad attack roll. Good saving throw in second edition.
Oh, I love this title. I want to know what's up with this one. All right, so this one comes from Yeo567 on our Ask Game Masters with the title, How do I handle the campaign after the players got their hands on a nation?
Wow. Okay.
New GM here. I am currently running a play-by-post campaign with occasional live sessions in a custom setting of mine using the Pathfinder 2nd Edition system. It's the first proper campaign I've ever ran, and at the end of an arc, my players had gotten their hands on a throne after going above and beyond my expectations. This is great and all, but it also leaves me a bit lost as to what to do now. I know the Kingmaker Kingdom management system exists for Pathfinder 2, but that will mean I have to jerry-rig a lot of the adventures paths things to work for my setting. If not making original content outright, and I haven't even played the module before. So I really fear I would botch it, or worse, never get it done. Another idea I have is that I would just do a large years to potentially decades spanning downtime where the players can make certain decisions on how they want to steer their empire, and the world evolves to reflect those decisions. Before, of course, eventually a new call to adventure comes and the players go on another quest with some old characters replaced if necessary. But I'm not sure if that will feel like too much of a cop-out. I've also talked with the players and they seem mostly ambivalent towards this, leaving the burden of decision on me. All of this leaves me with you guys. What will be your advice on what I should do next? I really want the players to feel their reward for pulling something this amazing off, so I welcome all advice that guarantees so. If nothing else, thanks for reading this far.
Yeah, this is a bizarre problem to have because generally speaking, getting your hands on like a kingdom should be well out of the reach of the players. The characters in the narrative should never do that. So I don't really know what the circumstances surrounding that would have possibly been, where you felt like that was an appropriate reward. So that's really peculiar, but given that that's the room you're in, the second option is where, to have a little bit of downtime between and then kind of handle it at a more meta level where you're kind of seeing what the players would do with their empire or whatever, and then having something called back. Because what you've done is you've pulled out the scope of the campaign, where D&D is typically small tactical skirmishes where the stakes get raised, but the scope really doesn't get raised. Like you're always playing chess. You never pull out and are playing Go and orchestrating giant battlefields of like nations and stuff like that. That's more of a Game of Thrones style of game, right? The political intrigue and tradecraft and stuff like that, where it's going to be really dialogue forward and it's going to be using your wits and stuff like that. And players, D&D characters are not typically well suited to do that. So that might be good, and then kind of anchoring it back as like a nostalgia to come back to a call to adventure where they actually have to get involved could be good. But I would posit that a better option would be, sure, maybe you gave them this thing, or let's just say they even earned it. But if you fast forward, the thing that if you want to keep it grounded in reality or grounded in, let's just say, practicality, getting the throne of a getting control of a nation, again, I'll iterate, should have always been well beyond the scope of something the players could ever attain. Especially in a feudal medieval world, those are often hereditary titles, and maybe there's some sort of like usurper that like takes over. He's a great warrior, Genghis Khan, like, and he takes over. But typically there's some intermediary there where it's like a usurper might raise an army, so he's used to being a commander. He's used to navigating and dealing with large scope problems and orchestrating tactics and stuff like that. And that might transition into being a leader. But to go from just being like low level adventurer or even high level adventurer to running a nation state is kind of like going from assistant manager at a McDonald's to being CEO of McDonald's Corporation.
Mm.
Right? So the better path would likely be to illustrate in what ways the players really can't. It's like a white elephant to have like a throne, right? You don't know how to manage a nation. Why the fuck would you? Like the feudal lords have generations of history and how to do that. And they're better poised for those reasons, although it's not in line with modern sensibilities. There's a reason that rulers ruled effectively over the course of an empire, and it had little to do with the fact that they seized power. And typically, people that seize power in some sort of coup or because they win some sort of war, they don't typically manage the resources of a wealth of nations all that well. That would be an interesting twist if your characters, your players, aren't particularly invested in the idea. Like, really, what they wanted was to see if they could get this thing that was more or less unattainable. And
That's
now
what I'm
that you
guessing as well.
and now that you've given it to them, they don't really have any interest in having it. They just wanted to get it because that's the way D&D characters are. They're about like the accumulation of wealth, and they're about the power to a lesser degree and stuff like that. But this sort of power has no practical application for them, and they probably realize that if this were going to become a game about them running the nation, well, then they wouldn't be dungeon crawling and swinging a sword at dragons and like
Hmm.
accumulating, mountains of gold and like drinking it up with their buddies or whatever. It's like that's not in the cards for them. And that's not, there's really no way to kind of maintain the spirit of a game that used to be that way and then have one where you're like a ruler of a nation. So it will be better to kind of handle it at a meta narrative kind of way and let them see what they do when it becomes evident that they just are inept at this, that they don't know how to manage a nation. Because why the fuck would they know how to manage a nation? Like, it just, but it raises the question of how they were ever even in the position to attain it to begin with. Because typically that might be something that you get at the end of a campaign for
Hmm.
20 levels worth of, maybe you gain some hereditary honorary noble title, and then maybe the game kind of shifts to where you have maybe some armies under your control, or you're managing resources and you build up to that. But to go from like adventurer to like ruler of a kingdom is a pretty big gap. And if you can illustrate in some ways the ways that they're not prepared to deal with that, and maybe even give them some say in kind of what happens, then it would provide an organic uh, devolving back to their adventuring roots.
Hmm.
Um, in the same way that sometimes this happens where you might start a company. Let's say you start a company and then the company just starts to get so big, and wise company founders realize, I cannot manage this company. I built the company, but now it's getting to a point where it's like, I need somebody who has the skills to manage this. And it's not me because I don't know, I didn't come up in that world. And so the founders of companies are not always the CEOs of the companies because they just don't want to do that because they don't know how to do that, or maybe they do but they just can't be bothered.
Hmm.
And so try to give your players some sort of parachutes where they can step back from their roles willingly. I don't know if it's like collectively the party has the rule, and in which case, if it's monarchy, how does like an entire party of adventurers run as a ruler? Or
Mm,
do they all individually have fiefdoms? He said kingdom. A kingdom is
yeah,
pretty big. Um, so you could have a variety of outcomes, maybe where some of the characters that are more, oh, I employ a council, and then this council does this and this and this, and then, whatever, and then I step back. But maybe one of them just has it go ruinously. Like they just, whatever aspect they're in charge of, they just don't know what they're doing. And so it just goes very poorly. Lots of people die, lots of people starve, alliances with neighboring countries,
hmm,
uh, boil over. Those could all be seeds for a great adventure, right?
fuck
Like,
yes,
right? Like, oh, the population is starving because I don't know
yep.
how to manage supply chains or diplomatic relations with a neighboring country. And like,
Yeah, not
okay,
only did you take over a throne
yep,
or a kingdom, or like it says in the title here, a fucking nation,
yeah,
but you also take all the people, all the livestock, all the everything, this whole, these huge plot of land, whatever it may be, is now governed by you and or the group, the party, whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of shit to think of, as well as it's a gigantic target and something that you have to protect. Like David was
hmm,
saying, other nations, other kingdoms, other, royalties of some sort, if they are of course going to come and try to hobnob and work with you, but if you don't like it, then it's very possible that you could go to war, they could send assassins, whatever it is like that. uh,
yeah.
there's a lot of shit that could happen now that you have something that everybody wants. There's a lot of shit that's going to happen.
Well, and if you're thinking about it from the NPCs and the world's perspective, anytime somebody has something that they didn't earn, then like you said, you become a target, not for overt violence necessarily, but how can we leverage and manipulate that? It'd be like if a 10-year-old won the Powerball.
Yeah.
If a 10-year-old won the Powerball, you wouldn't need to strong arm them out of the money because they're stupid and they don't know how to manage money. So you would
Mm-hmm.
just be like, hey, well, I mean, it makes sense that you would give me $20 million. And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, what for? And you're like, well, here's what I would, and you would just be, the vultures would come out of the woodwork in every way to exploit your nation. Um, and then possibly other sentient monsters or whatever would see you as a target, and it would just create so much bedlam for the world. And give a little bit of runway to that bedlam and let the players see like this is not what they wanted. Because there's a reason that it's not a Game of Thrones. It's not like John. I mean, it makes good television and everything, but it doesn't make much of a good role-playing game unless you're playing with actors and stuff and who are
Mm.
really into that sort of thing. But if they've conquered and got this throne, you need to try to repair the realism in the game a little bit and show them the consequences of having such a thing. And failing that, you could just gloss over it and just don't show the brushstrokes, have it be, yeah, 10 years into the future, whatever. Maybe give the players an out to step down, or maybe they've stepped into some sort of, leadership role, but not aren't really in charge of everything. And then they have to kind of return to their roots as an adventurer. It's a pretty hard thing to just hand wave away, right? To
Mm-hmm.
go, well, I mean, you were a ruler for a while and now you're not, and now back to adventuring. It's like, this is why you don't paint yourself into a corner with such big things like this is stakes need to raise organically and rewards need to raise in accordance with the stakes. So it's possible that they might be coming up on the end of a campaign, in which case, they get the nation or whatever, they're level like 16 or 17. Maybe they only have one more adventure till the campaign is over. In which case you might be able to kind of gloss over that because you only have one more call to adventure after years of ruling, and maybe it's a situation where they have to do it to ensure the legacy of the kingdom. Uh, in which case, once it's over, you can just allow that to kind of fade away into the background. But if it's going to be like an ongoing thing in the campaign moving forward, you need to address it. And the best way
Mm-hmm.
to address it is to get rid of it. And that
Yeah.
seems silly, but it really,
Otherwise, you're just going to be playing a pretty much a bureaucracy RPG for a while.
yeah, yeah,
Otherwise, yeah, it's just like, man, if you want to try to run it yourself, it's going to be tough, man. as well as being adventures at the same time, nah, it doesn't work out so well.
Yeah, it's
If it's
it's
early on like that.
yeah, the CEO of McDonald's isn't isn't going like, you know what, I just, I miss being on the fryer. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna come down to the common folk and I'm gonna be on the fryer. It's like, no, you're not doing that. You have too many things to deal with, and it's
Hmm.
not, you deploy adventurers at that level,
Yep.
right? You hire them and deploy them because you have the wealth and resources and
Well,
no
yeah,
time
you're in
or
charge of the
know-how.
guilds. You're in charge of, yeah, you send out the adventurers after that.
Yeah. And so to be the person that's now in charge of that, making those decisions, there's this thing in D&D games often where, and I get it because they're fantasy oriented RPGs, and we don't really want to be confronted with the gritty reality of like certain things in a game like that, especially because it's not really actionable or
Hmm.
all that relevant. But there's this idea sometimes that what's needed is just noble intentions, right? Like if you're just a good-hearted adventurer, I'm lawful good and I'm a pious man. It's like, but you get into kind of ruling, you get into all sorts of competing goods that the players are often embroiled in one side or another, but aren't really having to weigh those competing goods. Like you, sure, in D&D, there's just some characters, rulers that are just tyrants, and then there are others that are maybe more favorable. But any ruler is likely to be unpopular with somebody because you just have to balance all those competing goods, and the notion that just because the characters mean well, that they can govern well, and that is almost directly the opposite of what's true. Um, and so, I mean, didn't you have this with one of your players before, Matt, where it was like he was like a leader of a nation or whatever, and he just had this attitude like, well, like I'm a leader, and it's like, yeah, but you don't command the
Yes.
same respect as the other leaders, and you don't know what you're doing, and
Yep.
and it's like, yeah, confront them with some of those consequences and the
Yeah.
attitudes surrounding them.
In fourth edition, my group that I played with for their Epic Destiny tier, level 20 to 30, uh, my buddy Rob, his character, a Goliath barbarian, had it in his backstory that his tribe was like a nomadic tribe trying to find their new home at some point, and he was going to be like the Paul Atreides of their tribe. He wanted to find the new home, which he did, and then they made him leader of it, this kingdom that. But I put into place mechanics on how to build it. I didn't just give him a kingdom that was already, established. It was
Hmm.
like build up, so he actually had to go out and adventure and make it bigger. But later on, other leaders from around told him, it was just like, hey, we need your help. We need you to side with us to do this and this. And he's like, fuck yeah, I'll crush this person and I'll do this and this. Is like, whoa, whoa, we don't do that. We have to do things differently around here. And he's like, fuck that. I'm a king. I can do whatever the fuck I want. And they're like, no, no, you don't. There are things that we have to do. And yeah, sometimes it can make for it, and it can make the whole campaign implode if you're not finessing it right.
It's because adventurers are, you know, for better or worse, they're a blunt instrument,
Mm-hmm.
and that's often what they're leveraged for. And yeah, not that there's not role playing or some sort of skullduggery that's afoot, but yeah, you're a barbarian. You can't just go, well, I'll just go smash everything until everything works. It's like it doesn't work that way. Like,
Yeah.
and maybe even being the leader of a tribe or something wouldn't be too big in scope for like a high level, but he's given me the impression, the questioner, that the campaign is likely to continue on for a decent amount past this, and in
Yeah,
which
that's what
case,
I'm trying to figure. I tried to go over it a few more times and to even see if they got into the comments to say like what level they are, or what part of the campaign this is, because it just
yeah,
says this at the end of an arc they got their hands on it,
yeah,
and he
it's
says
like,
that he's a new GM, so yeah, he can't have been playing for that long.
right, and so, but this, I'm sorry to say it, but this smacks of like a new GM problem where it's like
Mm-hmm.
you've you've given the players a nation before the end of a campaign. It's like, well, where do you go from there, right? It's like oh, they fought, they fought Orcus, and you're like, okay, so now they've defeated Orcus. That's usually like end of the world, kind of end of a level 20 campaign. what are you going to do for the next challenge? Like, you still have 4 levels of campaign left. Like, what would you do? Unless you want to end it right there. But it's like it's the same problem that you introduce by introducing like an artifact or like some legendary weapon, like levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like, what do you do with that? It just kind of like breaks the game. Like, what are you going to reward them with past that? It's like, so the stakes need to raise to the point where the rewards are appropriate. And frankly, if the stakes are raised so that the welfare of an entire nation is at stake, and the reward for it would be presuming authority over that nation, then the challenges should have been in line with like level 20 adventurers, because frankly, you're not capable of saving a nation until you're that, like, let's just say at least level 15. You can save a nation at level 15. And you're level 20, you could save the entirety of the world or the cosmos. That's how powerful your characters would be. But a level 5 character can't do anything other than just like affect things on like a local level. Like, he can
Yeah.
save a village, but probably more like a camp or a tribe or something. And level 6 to 8 or 9, you could save a village, and then maybe level 10, 11, 12, 13, you're like a region, like the Sword Coast. I could save the region. But when you're getting up to those levels, the challenges should have been in line with those stakes. And so they're kind of naturally correcting for it to be over once that reward is given. It's almost like an epilogue at that point. And then you're just like rule over the kingdom and whatever, and fade off into the sunset. And this is how your character spends his intervening years, right? But that doesn't make any sense to happen in the middle of a campaign. So I don't know where you would plan on going with it. It's like he neophyte GMs often think that like the way to make your players enjoy your game is to just shower them with rewards. And I've always found that the opposite is typically true. The more you hold back and the more you are kind of stingy with rewards, you make the world difficult to navigate, then every little reward feels hard won. And it's like their characters are affecting the world as opposed to just navigating in a world where it's like people just ale and pussy and fucking gummy bears raining out of the sky, right? It's like, so that does seem like a problem that he needs to correct for, and it's going to be difficult to not hand wave it away and also dramatically shift the tone. But I promise him he doesn't want to play a game where they're managing the Catan of Dungeons and Dragons. It's just
Yeah.
not going to be very fun. Or Pathfinder, I guess, in this case.
Yeah. I have to go back. I love how this guy ups the kingdom over and over again. Like in the title, he says, got their hands on a nation. Then he starts, oh, they got a throne. Oh, it's a kingdom. Oh, it's a nation. And then later on down here is just how they want to steer their empire.
Yeah,
Just
it's
like,
suddenly an
Jesus
empire.
Christ, man. What the fuck?
Well, I mean, this is just kind of, I think he doesn't have a well-defined sense of what that means.
Yeah.
Because an empire is a collection of nations, and a
Yeah.
kingdom is
Because
a,
even
an
on here,
empire. An empire is a collection of kingdoms, and a nation is a collection, or a kingdom is a collection of nations.
yeah.
And a throne is just emblematic of that. So it's like, if it were just a throne, like they just a county or something, and they were in charge of that, that might not be such a big deal. But if you're talking about the entirety of a country, like, potentially millions of people, that's just beyond the scope of something that they're really going to be able to deal with. Like, and if you're a new GM and your players are new, if his players are seasoned, I understand why they're ambivalent about it. They're probably grumbling about it and being like, "Oh, this is kind of stupid. Like, I don't know what to do with this." And if they're not, then they're not going to know how to handle it. They're not going to even. What would that look like? What would the game look? It would be like, oh, we're in a medieval fantasy world, and we're playing Pathfinder and swords and horses, and you find this weird magical device, and now you're in 21st century America. You would be like, okay, like, now what do I do? Right? I have no idea like where to take that, because it's just a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah. Even on here, he has a TLDR. Players got their hands on an empire. New GM doesn't know what to do.
It's Yeah, I mean, I hate to kind of rain on his parade, but he needs to wrangle things back. The fast forwarding in time is probably gonna allow for some of that, or you just need to have some very kind of almost melodramatic event happen that I don't know where he left it, but there's still possible to do the Saturday Evening Post kind of bullshit.
Hmm.
Where it would be like a character is driving in a car and he flies off the cliff or whatever, and then it's like, and stay tuned next week, right? And he's in the car and he's like, ah, and then when they come back next week, they show you like, oh, he jumped out of the car before it went off the cliff, and it's like, no, but he was in the car
Yeah.
at the end of the episode. I fucking saw it, right?
Hmm.
You were telling me what he was doing inside the car, and it flew off the cliff. You need to start there. But there might be some room for him to do something like that, where it seems like they've got this thing, but then he has some melodramatic event that snatches it from them, and then maybe the rest of the campaign has them working back up to regain control because now they've been outed in some way, or become persona non grata, or
Hmm.
they have a target on their back or something like that, and now they need to regain that thing that they already worked so hard to get, which I challenge whether they worked hard to get it if it's this early in the
Right. Yeah.
campaign. um, but there might still be some opportunity to do something like that. That's probably the best option. It's a little cheap, but giving them a kingdom this early is, in anything that isn't the end of a campaign, level 20 is
Mm.
a little cheap too. So
When it's this early on, I think the best course of action is like David was saying uh, before, where having this kingdom now, they have to. There has to be something that they have to achieve for it somehow. There has to be a purpose for them to go on another adventure, to do something, because especially if they are lower level. Like here now, maybe perhaps one of the characters finds out that there is a relative of one of the old rulers of the kingdom and it is rightfully theirs. Give them the option to go talk to them maybe, and then they go on a quest to go find this person to say, hey, we have your kingdom that you have rights to. We want to offer it to you. Maybe that's something they can do. Uh, Otherwise, it's going to be kind of like a lot of people ask about how would an evil campaign work. The way evil campaigns work is evil characters always have an agenda.
hmm.
Like think of any evil character in fiction ever. They always have a purpose. They always have a goal. They always have a drive.
Yep.
That's why sometimes people, when they play RPGs and they're playing the heroes, they don't know exactly what to do because they got to wait for the evil to show up in order for them to act.
Hmm.
Uh, the other way around with evil campaigns, the characters have to have the drive to do so. With this, they have to have the drive to make this kingdom work. I think you have to play up the overall weight of running a kingdom, an empire, a throne, whatever it may be. Uh, and you have to show them. And it seems like you're the party here, according from the questioner, that they seem to be cool with going along with whatever he decides. So I think it would be good if, yes, maybe a small time jump. I wouldn't say 10 years, maybe like half a year to a year of it, and then describe how difficult it is managing this. And that maybe, like David was saying before, maybe they yearn for adventure again, and they realize that being rulers of a kingdom sucks.
Well, you're right. Evil is on offense and good is on defense. That's
Hmm.
why you're defense. That's why RPGs typically revolve around heroes because they're trying
Hmm.
to stop the bad guys
Yep.
from doing something. It's less fun if you're just trying to wreak havoc,
Hmm.
and it's like, okay. Um, so that's true, but in the question that you would need to ask for practical purposes is, why does everyone else, neighboring kingdoms, the people in the court of the kingdom, the general population, anyone, believe that their ruling this kingdom has legitimacy? There has to be a reason that they have that it has legitimacy, because otherwise they'll just be killed immediately. Right? Like,
Yeah.
if it doesn't have some sort of legitimate, they don't have a legitimate claim. But the reason it smacks of a kind of new GM problem is when I hear new GMs say that oh, my players, actually like did this really clever thing and they just really it's like, no, because you don't have a sense of the scale. You're a new GM, and so you think that because your players impressed you that they earned this kingdom when they didn't. It's a little like being like, oh, well, he rolled a nat 20, so he just jumps over this mountain. It's like, no, it doesn't matter that he rolled a nat 20. He doesn't get to jump over a mountain, right?
Mhm.
Like, it doesn't work that way. So, like, just because you're impressed, I'm skeptical that the orchestration of, like, let's say they're 15 levels in, okay? That would still be too low of a level to get a kingdom as a reward in my estimation. But let's just say it's level 15. They were so clever, not unless they were planning from level 1 to take over this kingdom, and you had 15 levels of them literally doing all sorts of crazy stuff, then they weren't clever enough to justify this reward just because you kind of liked what they did and maybe some sort of scheming that they did. You don't topple an entire kingdom that easily. And if that's the precedent you want to set in your world, that kingdoms are toppled so easily, then everything is bedlam. It's absolute bedlam. Like, what's to stop anybody from taking over anything? I mean, imagine usurping like deposing an evil tyrant in the Pathfinder D&D world is usually like an entire campaign's worth of thing to just get that guy out of power. Because there's all these, for lack of a better word, power structures that are enabled to protect them. And as a lowly level adventurer, you're not likely to break through them. It takes, even independent of levels, it would take years in game and if you were planning it from level 1, it would take years and years in the game for you to have earned that in any capacity. And that's making the assumption that you had the skills available. Like, if you made the right choices and you were well equipped to do it, and neither of which is likely to be very true. So I'm really skeptical when it's like, like, oh, they actually did like a really good job, and it's like, yeah, but really good job is not proportionate to the reward that you've handed out.
Mhm.
And you've painted yourself into a corner and ostensibly kind of like stabbed the campaign in its foot. So you need to do some damage control, either by trying to underwrite it, showing the complications that would come along with it, or like you said, maybe just kind of giving them an opportunity to stand back or pull back because they yearn to be adventurers. Because if they're prime level adventurers, they're probably in their 20s, maybe
Yeah.
their 30s, and so maybe not necessarily all that well equipped. You see this in lots of fantasy stuff where it's like, historically, oh, well, he was king at 12 or whatever, Joffrey, and
Yeah.
like the reason that can happen is because it really doesn't matter, right? He has other people that are around him that can help run the country. He's just a figurehead ruler until he's old enough to actually make decisions. And so the world of Game of Thrones didn't fall apart just because, like a young kid was in charge. So because there's all these layers between. It's not just like, oh, I'll just take that one guy out. I'll just yank him off the throne and throw him on the ground, and now I'm the king. It's like, that
Yeah.
is not how it works.
I wonder if some of these commenters, it seems a lot of people don't know what a kingdom is. They think, or it seems like they think a kingdom is a lot smaller. It's almost as if they're thinking of a keep, where there's
Oh.
the castle and then like a small village around it. Because like this one here, I thought it was a pretty good comment, but from Nanakamato Bauer, they say you found yourself in a tight spot for a new GM, but from what you write, I think you could manage. First thing I would do is talk with your table to learn about their expectations. I have a table that likes high power, so I have currently 2 campaigns with country governing level players. For us, it's mostly about some adventures in court, full of politics and diplomacy, some about changing and modernizing said countries, some still about exploration or adventure that no one else can do. Uh, this is the part, yeah. In simplest way, you can think about a kingdom as a hideout, just a big, complex one. If your table is not interested in advanced management, don't care about management mechanics, treasury, laws, food, law, and order, it all can be played narratively. It's also a good way to know more about your players when you get great responsibility and great possibilities, narrative freedom, and management. How will they act? Will they role play their characters' traits? Will they milk this occasion, or will they grow to the task? And there's a
No,
couple other ones in there that's. It sounds like, yeah, it's just a big hideout. And I'm like, no, it's a
no.
kingdom.
Definitionally, it's not a hideout because a hideout is away from plain view, and a kingdom is plain view. It
Yeah.
is like not like in plain view. That's what plain view is. Like it's like stand in for a community, right? There's no a community is a hideout. It's like, well, no, because then you're not part of the community definitionally. So yeah, I think they're just misunderstanding fundamentally what that means. And so yeah, I don't know, like the management and all that stuff, it just seems like it'd be really untenable. And it also totally ignores, like, oh, they go out on quests and stuff. It's like, no, they would not. If you were, there's a reason that the president of the United States doesn't like do certain things. It's like he's too powerful, he's too valuable. He's there to make decisions. And same thing with a king. They're not letting a king go dungeon crawling. Like no one in the world is going to let that happen. And so that just makes no sense. There's a reason that typically in a war in wars, the generals are not on the front lines because they're too valuable. And so you would really need to step back entirely from the whole concept of adventuring and dungeon crawling, and maybe combat comes to you or you can still defend yourself and stuff like that. But the whole idea of being a king is that you wouldn't be fighting. You'd have a whole army of people that would be defending you and an elite guard and like a fleet of ships and a stable of horses and all this stuff, all these resources between you and anything hostile, which is again goes back to my point with how did the characters just saunter in and depose some ruler that easily? It just doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
so unless you just want to ignore logic and common sense and world building, these are problems that need to be contended with, and they need to be contended with fairly carefully. You don't need to get into all the details, but you do need to provide something that restores your credibility for the world. Otherwise, the world will just feel like anything and everything goes. And I will tell you that the players will not like that. I've never met a player that really wants to play in a game like that.
I got to give it up here to user Trip Secret, who said a kingdom is not a hideout, and then he just left a link to the Merriam-Webster's definition of kingdom.
Yep.
Good on you, sir.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's going to be the end of this episode, unless you got anything to add there, David.
Nah, I was long enough.
All right. Well, then let's just leave that one on a good luck. Wait, you say good luck. I say good night.
And good luck.